Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 13, Episode 141. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here this Friday, Steelers Nation. Dave, the Pittsburgh Steelers wrapping up their 3-week voluntary OTAs on Thursday. They'll be back on the practice field, though, next week for their 3-day mandatory minicamp, which is essentially, in essence, the same thing. There really weren't any players missing from the voluntary part of OTA, so that'll be basically status quo, but one step closer to training camp. We have those dates announced, so a fair amount going on right now.
Man, happy Friday. And I'm super excited on this Friday because it sounds like the Steelers are going to trade for Chase Young and sign Dalvin Cook. Oh, wait, no. It's just speculated that those things could happen. No, that's as good a place to probably as any to start, addressing that. Obviously,
well, I got to ask you about one unrelated sports thing. So people don't want to hear this nonsense from me. Fast forward about 90 seconds. This story will either mean nothing to you or everything to you, but it's in your neck of the woods, and it was all over my timeline yesterday. Have you seen any 9 to 10 foot aliens in your backyard at all? It sounds like you're aware of the story.
Yeah, I am. And it's, I watched it again this morning, and I don't know, man, we got Area 51 out here, right? I'll leave it at this. Nothing would surprise me.
Not even that?
Not even that.
Okay.
Am I open to the thought that there might be life out there elsewhere from this planet? I have never closed out that thought of that. Has things happened in the past with this planet that maybe we're not privy to the information of? I believe there's a chance of that. Have I seen any aliens before? Well, I don't. You go back to my youth and some of the things that I used to do. I've seen a lot of stuff.
In Vegas, though, have you ever seen anything weird in the sky, like legitimately that caught you by surprise?
No, I mean on clear nights you can see a lot of shooting stars and things falling out of the sky, but nothing that would lead me to believe it'd be anything more than a shooting star. But yeah, that's become quite popular clip, not only in Vegas but on social media as well too. So if we find, look, I'd have to get the measurables on them, that.
Their length should be pretty good. They can play O-line for Pittsburgh, I think. They got the length they look for.
Hey, if they're anything over 6'5", 300 something pounds, I'm gonna investigate for sure, because that would fall into the planet theory type. So I would immediately direct it towards NFL measurements and all like that. But
the other planet theory.
Yeah, the other planet theory. There you go. Nicely done.
Just for the record, because I'm legitimately into this stuff and I want these stories to be true so bad. I went down a deep rabbit hole yesterday looking at different YouTube videos. One of the members of that house did a podcast even before this became a national story yesterday. I don't believe it's true. I listened to the story more. It sounds more and more farcical the more that you hear about it. I don't know what exactly the explanation is, if it's a prank, if it's some confusion or what. But as much as I would love for it to be true, the more that I did research on it, the more I go, I don't think this is the full story here.
Do you think are you open to the possibility of there being other life forms out there?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think like just mathematically. And I mean, there are so many, I think, more interesting UFO stories, whether you're talking about Commander David Fravor, to Roswell, to Kecksburg, to the Phoenix Lights, to a million other stories that are really interesting. The Tic Tac, the Go Fast. I mean, I think there's some really compelling stuff. This one, to me, based on the evidence that I've seen so far, just does not pass the sniff test.
Boy, I did not have Steelers Depot X-Files edition.
Let's go hunt some aliens, Dave. Come on, let's go.
I don't know. It might be a lot more interesting than what we've got to talk about today there. But yeah, I didn't have that on the bingo card this morning here. But hey, you never know what you're going to get on this podcast, especially in the open. Back to the Steelers X-Files.
Yes.
The whole look, every time somebody of prominence looks like they might be traded or cut, and I'm willing to bet this happens with 31 other franchises around the league with their fan bases as well too. But the whole Chase Young thing, look, I get it. Mike Tomlin, that conversation on the sideline with Chase Young a couple years ago there, had people excited at the time, thinking that maybe one day Chase Young could be a Pittsburgh Steeler. And look, maybe he could down the road. But as I wrote the other day, just contractually and with Chase Young being in the final year of his contract after not having his 5th year option picked up, and he's got a roster bonus tied to him. I think that matures on August the 1st. If Washington were to trade him, it would probably happen before August 1st. But once again, you're talking about a guy that would come to whatever team with like a $5 million cap charge, potentially be a 1-year rental type situation in Pittsburgh specifically. How would you're going to probably extend Alex Highsmith this offseason. Mm-hmm. How would he fit you? You just signed Marcus Golden. Nothing adds up with the plausibility factor of Chase Young landing in the Steelers this year. Now, if you want to get past this year and start having conversations, look, I think it's best served really for both parties, both Washington and Chase Young, for him to play out his final season, with Washington, and then see what happens there. I mean, he hasn't played in a lot, 12 games or 15 games. I forget how many games over the last 2 seasons there. It just, everything smells like him staying in Washington, unless Washington was just to get an offer that would blow their socks off for him. It doesn't make a lot of sense for him to leave Washington unless he wants out, which, he's not going to get an extension with another team, I wouldn't think. So none of this adds up to him potentially being traded to the Steelers. And really, I'll be surprised if Chase Young is traded at all this summer. So that should end that with Chase Young.
Yeah, I'm with you, Dave. I don't want to rule out that some point down the road, and I know that you probably agree, that maybe Chase Young could become a Steeler, given the pedigree, Tomlin's affinity for the high draft picks. There's that clip from, I think, maybe Young's rookie year where Tomlin says, I'd hate to draft guys like you because that means I had a terrible year and I'm picking, top 2, top 5. But this year's not going to be the year based off of Pittsburgh's construction, signing Marcus Golden, drafting Nick Herbig. As you said, I'm with you. I think Young ultimately stays in Washington for the 2023 season. Down the road, who knows? I'm not going to rule that out. I don't think it's a crazy thought. I haven't really given how much plausibility to the idea there is beyond 2023, because who the heck knows what things will look like a year from now. And obviously, you'll have Highsmith, presumably long-term, and TJ Watt. So where does Young fit into that? We'll see how the season goes for him. But yeah, this year, it's trendy. It's the off season. I get why people are talking about it, but there really isn't a lot of legs to this story.
Right. It's just off season speculated fodder, kind of stuff. Look, I mean, if he had a couple more years left on his contract or something like that, maybe we could entertain some sort of discussion on it. But just the way things sit right now with his contract and with the price involved and what the compensation would be, all that, none of it adds up to being plausible at all.
Now, compared to the idea of Dalvin Cook coming to Pittsburgh, Young looks a whole lot more sensible. And the only person I've seen, I haven't even gotten a straight Twitter comment about Dalvin Cook, who is expected to be released by 4 p.m. today, barring some sort of last second trade, which probably will not materialize, but we'll see. On FS1 Speak, Joy Taylor, when going through possible fits for Dalvin Cook, suggested Pittsburgh. And again, that's the only person I've seen, even online, mention Cook to Pittsburgh. I don't think there's any sort of basis for that from Cook's standpoint, from the Steelers standpoint, from a financial standpoint. So I don't want to spend a terrible amount of time on this because I think everybody understands why Cook would not come to Pittsburgh. But I do want to mention that because that gained some traction yesterday.
Yeah, and that's another one that I just don't see happening. There's going to be plenty of suitors out there for him, assuming he is cut. I can't see him being traded, especially with that contract as well. Is he willing to come play for $1.08 million? Because that's the only way I could see anything like that happening. And look, they've already got obviously Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. Just nothing of that sticks as well. It's a nice thought to have another experienced running back. Look, if he gets cut, he stays on the market. Somebody and somebody in the Steelers backfield gets injured or something along those lines. Maybe we can have that talk. But as things stand right now, this team's in, other than the third running back spot, which we've talked quite a bit about as of late, there's no room on a roster for a veteran like that.
Yeah, and nor would Cook want to come to Pittsburgh to have some sort of definitely, obviously, timeshare role in a pretty significant way. And when you have Najee Harris, who you're going to have to make a decision on next year for a fifth-year option, and with Jalen Warren's promising rookie year, and you're excited about year 2 for him, again, there's no way that Cook's going to fit. He's going to probably go to Miami, his hometown team, or I don't know, Denver, Cincinnati potentially. If he does go to the North, it'll be Cincinnati, not Pittsburgh. So. I like Joy Taylor. I think she's, I just listened to an interview that she did a couple weeks ago about her time working with Colin Cowherd and all that kind of stuff. But I just think she's way off the mark here.
Yeah, look, I mean, she's a Steelers fan. She should know that, they've got a guy in there, in Jalen Warren, and who really had a great rookie season overall and should progress and be able to be that kind of change of pace, every down potential filling in type of back situation there. So there's, once again, barring injury or anything along those lines, there's really no chance. I think he's going to end up in Miami. That makes the most sense there, but certainly not a trade, and they're going to have problems trading him on top of it all there. So I would expect his release to happen later on today, as the speculation is, and then it kind of be a free for all, best fit, most money.
I guess the only interesting launching point off the Cook discussion, and we've talked about this before, but obviously we've seen these teams invest in the running back position contractually, and these teams end up bailing on running backs before their deals are done, whether it's, Zeke Elliott, Dalvin Cook. There's an obviously pretty lengthy list of names that you could go through. So when it comes to Najee Harris with the 5th-year option next year versus either not giving him the option, picking up the option, or extending him, that's where it kind of goes back to you probably do the 5th-year option, even if Harris has a strong season, just because historically when you offer those long-term deals, they don't typically, last that long for the running back position.
Yeah, look, I mean, and we had this conversation a couple of weeks ago, how this season goes for Naji, assuming he can stay healthy, and on the field for, 15, 16 games, something like that. is going to make that decision either very easy or very hard. Obviously the hope is that he stays healthy, and if he has the kind of season that we think that he can have in this kind of bully ball, because he's going to get a lot of work in 2023, then there's a very strong chance that they pick up his 5th-year option by the deadline next offseason, and then we'll see how it goes after that, because obviously the 5th-year option would be for the 2025 season, so there probably wouldn't. You could do an extension with him, a la kind of the Christian McCaffrey situation a couple years ago, if need be. Or you can let him play out that 5th-year option, then see whether or not, because you have control over him, right? You have the 5th-year option, and then you could even string this out into a couple of franchise tags that way. So I think that's way too far out to kind of think about right now. I think the biggest thing ahead of us when it comes to Najee Harris is what kind of season can he have in 2023, and will that lead to his 5th-year option being picked up?
Mm-hmm. You're right. It is a far out thought, but let's assume he has a good year that is worthy of the 5th-year option. Let's say it's a really good year. He rushes for 1,300, 1,400 yards, 10 touchdowns, just a really great season for Najee Harris behind this improved Steelers offensive line. There will be the idea of, do you give the guy an extension? Because that would probably, well, that's for 2025, but financially, if you could, get a relatively friendly deal, not have to worry about the 5th-year option whenever that year comes for 2025, that's going to be a conversation point. And we're going to go back to the whole debate of, is it worth extending out a running back, or just basically playing him as long as you can play him on his rookie deal, discarding him, and then finding someone else to replace him?
Look, if he has a great 2023 season, that'll obviously lead to the 5th-year option being picked up. Sure, you can have the conversations. Then you can look at the running back market, and maybe do something like a 2-year extension or something along those lines. But it would be a rarity, especially when it comes to the Steelers, right? Because normally they don't extend the guys that they have given 5th-year options to until they're heading into that actual 5th year.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the history there. I mean, there's not been a lot of recent examples of these 5th-year options they've been playing on, right? Because you've seen either not had first-round picks, or these guys declined. What are the examples, though, with the 5th year? I mean, I guess they did have the decision on Minka, even though he was not their, literal first-round pick, but he got that done before the 5th-year option, right?
Well, a year after the decision was made, right?
I'm trying to think of the whole timeline. Was it a year after the decision?
Yeah, because they picked up, when was his 5th-year option exercised? Because he just got the new deal last year. Then hold on a minute here.
So I guess it would have been the year before.
2021 was when they exercised his 5th-year option, and he obviously didn't get the new deal until heading into that actual 5th year.
Okay, so just based on the history, even if Harris has a great season, we're not looking at a potential even extension talk until 2024 or 2025.
Yeah, 2025.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, yeah, but it'll be interesting for sure. And yeah, I think expectations are high for Najee Harris and for this run game. I think the efficiency has to be there. You're hopefully getting a couple more explosive plays, 20+ yard runs, which takes a whole team effort. It's not just about the running back, it's about the tight ends, the receivers getting involved. But I think Harris has that ability to have a career year in 2023.
Look, you after drafting him in the first round a couple of years ago, this needs to be a fantastic year for him, in my opinion.
Yeah. Now, is there a way you define fantastic year, or is it just kind of,
I mean, you got to stay on the, when you see it. I mean, but I mean, obviously got to stay healthy. I would think minimum of 1,500 rushing yards, right?
1,500?
Yeah.
I don't want to call that the minimum. I mean, if he does, I'm not gonna be mad at him for it. But
I mean, 1,500. I mean, let's say he plays in at least 16 games. You know, that's 90, an average of 93 yards rushing. And I feel like a former first round draft pick, the way this offensive line has been rebuilt, the idea that they're going to run it a lot. I mean, all right, I'll take 100 yards off that. You know, 1,400 rushing yards would put him on an average of 87.5 yards per game over 16 games played. That's giving him a game off there. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if you can't, if he doesn't rush, what does this season look like if he doesn't rush for 1,400 yards?
Well, I mean, it depends on the exact split between Harris and Warren. Warren's going to cut into that. You know, Harris is no longer this supreme workhorse back the way that he was his rookie year, the way that Le'Veon Bell was in his prime, where the dude never came off the field. So there are just going to be some fewer opportunities, I think, for him in general. So from an efficiency standpoint, I think he got to get the yards per carry at least above 4.0. I mean, obviously that's even then not that great, but he's been at 3.9, 3.8 his first 2 years. So let's get in the fours there. Get some more explosive plays, which will help out the average, obviously. And yeah, I think if you can rush for at least, 1,300 yards, getting close to 10 touchdowns with, 4-point-something yards per carry, with a pretty good run success rate, then that's kind of what I'm shooting for.
Okay, but I mean, you drafted this guy first, in the first round and all like that. I mean, that's the kind of season I'm expecting out of him.
Okay.
Yeah, and look, I mean, this is a guy that can catch the football out of the backfield, so I would think total yards wise, no less than 1,700. I would think. I mean, to me, that would be kind of the floor. I mean, he's the kind of guy that if things go right, this could be pushing maybe 2,000 total yards from scrimmage.
I think the question is, will there be enough volume there to get to 2,000? I feel like you have to be that workhorse guy the way that Bell was, I think in more 2014.
Well, then why did you draft him in the first round,
Well, you find Jalen Warren. I mean, Jalen Warren's going to be your third down back this year, right?
So a lot of instances, yeah. I don't think he's going to be out there every third down, but yeah, okay. Obviously. But I mean, look, I mean, do you need to give Najee Harris 320 carries? No. Right.
So I think it's just tough to get those historically, because like if you had 2,000 yards from scrimmage, it'd be a historically good year from that stat perspective. And I just don't know if the volume is going to quite be there. I think they're finally getting off the volume aspect of the running back position and looking at more of the efficiency and not trying to grind this guy into dust by the time, week 15 rolls around.
What was Mike Clay's fantasy projections on?
I think it was pretty weak on Harris, I want to say. I don't have the numbers in front of me. Josh has been writing the articles on that. I don't think the numbers were very favorable. I think they were pretty low on Najee Harris. And if he has that kind of year, then it's not going to be a very strong year for Najee Harris.
Let's see here. Mike Clay from ESPN has Najee at 255 carries, 1,017 yards, 6 touchdowns, 43 catches, 273 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So that would put him at 1,300 total yards from scrimmage on almost 300 total touches and 8 touchdowns.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the kind of year that Harris wants. He's projecting them pretty similar to what Harris had last year, it seems like.
Okay. I feel like I'd be disappointed if he hit those numbers.
Yeah, I would be too. I think if it's basically a repeat of last year based on the O-line improvements and the offensive philosophy, I mean, again, you'd have to see exactly what happened. Maybe he does miss time. Maybe the O-line gets hurt. Maybe he's dealing with an injury similar to the first half of last year. I don't know. But yeah, if those are the numbers, then that's to me a disappointing season.
All right. What's your minimum of where he should be total rushing yards or yards from scrimmage?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a specific number in mind, but I think in terms of what I'm looking for, if I think about what's a really good year for Harris, again, the efficiency being up, 4.0 at least yards per carry, but preferably, somewhere in the closer to mid 4 yards per carry range, 1,300 yards rushing, again, about 10, rushing touchdowns. As a receiver, kind of expecting a bit less because Warren, I think, will have the majority of the third down snaps. So, my expectations aren't as much there, but we'll say 1,300 yards rushing and say about 1,700 yards from scrimmage is kind of what I'm hoping for.
And let's see, who were the leading rushers last year?
And then obviously health. I mean, the one thing is, now Harris has battled some stuff, but he's never missed the start of a game. He's played in all 17 games his rookie year, and last year he's missed portions of game. Colts game last year, I understand that, dealing with the foot injury, the toe injury last year, but he's been remarkably available, and hopefully that streak can continue because that obviously dictates generally what your overall seasonal numbers will be.
Your top three rushers last year in yards: Josh Jacobs 1,653, Derrick Henry 1,538, Nick Chubb 1,525. Let's even go. Here's a better way maybe to phrase it. Should Najee Harris be expected to be a top five in rushing yardage in 2023?
I think if he's around there, that's fine.
Miles Sanders was fifth last year with 1,269 yards.
With 1,269 was fifth?
Was fifth.
Okay, then I put him at 1,300. So I guess yes, based off of just the aggregate yardage number, sure.
Okay.
But I do want to see what the split is like because we know that Warren's going to eat into those snaps more, and he's going to have a pretty clear and defined role, and that is going to take away some of the volume from Harris. Hopefully, though, in order to make him more efficient, keep him fresher, create some of those more explosive runs, and not wear this guy down, which is what's typically happened with the Steelers lead backs over time, whether it's Willie Parker or to some extent Le'Veon Bell. And, James Conner couldn't stay healthy. He couldn't have the workhorse load. And so I think Pittsburgh's realizing, let's try something different.
And Dalvin Cook, who we just talked about there, was sixth in the league in rushing yardage with 1,173 yards.
Yeah, I mean, Cook can still run, dude. I mean, he's had 1,100 plus yards in each of his last 4 seasons. So, I mean, he's going to make an impact somewhere else. I'm still not entirely sure why Minnesota's dumping him, but they're kind of dumping everybody right now.
Mm-hmm. All right. How did we get down that? Well, we talk about Cook, and we went down the Naji hole there.
Yeah. Well, let's stick with running back because I think although it's not going to be as consequential as Najee Harris' season, I'm really excited for the number 3 running back battle. We've talked about that some. We've mentioned McFarland, special teams. But I think the newcomers, the rookies, and Alfonso Graham, who made the team from a tryout, invited to rookie minicamp on a tryout basis, and then Darius Hagans, who just got signed the other day. I think those guys battling in OTAs throughout camp could be a really fun competition to watch this summer.
Yeah, we just mentioned Anthony McFarland the other day, who we really feel needs to either he needs to really have a good summer, as a running back, but he even still the special teams aspect, and it's going to apply to these other 2 rookie running backs as well too. So you're just going to have to let it sort itself out. But at least some of the reports from OTAs have been favorable on these younger running backs so far.
Yeah, there's been some buzz on Graham, and I believe it was Jerry Dulac in his chat yesterday was asked about who will be the third running back on this team. And obviously we're still a long ways away from, determining that, but he said his guess would be Alfonso Graham and said he looks like Jalen Warren. Now I assume that's from just an impressive standpoint because they're built differently. Graham is small and shorter. I mean, Warren is short, but he's stocky built. Graham is not necessarily that kind of guy, but Graham's kind of a bit more open field runner, but quality special teamer, can catch, hard nosed, good effort kind of dude. And that's how Warren got noticed last year.
Boy, what a story that would be for Mike Tomlin to use once again, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, it's OTAs, and we've had these camp darlings and OTA, buzz guys before, and they fall off. Remember, how do you say his name? Damon Patterson, the receiver from a couple of years ago. Like great first week. That's the one thing, and we'll kind of tie this into training camp because the schedule just came out yesterday. That first week of training camp, teams not in pads, a lot of guys shine, especially the skill guys, receivers, running backs, and then the pads come on and things go quiet. And can you finish through the end? That always happens every year. I remember Steven Denmark, a long corner a couple years back, great first week, fades, gets cut, never heard from again. So you have to keep that in mind when it comes to training camp.
Absolutely. All right. Speaking of training camp, why don't you tell people about the schedule and all?
Yeah, the 2023 Pittsburgh Steelers training camp schedule released yesterday. The players will report on July 26th, with the first practice taking place on July 27th. First padded practice will be Tuesday, August 1st. And so they'll have that 4-day ramp-up period where they'll be in shells, no live hitting, no tackling, but they'll have that padded practice on the 1st. The Friday night lights practice will be Friday, August 4th. In total, there are 16 practices. All of them are at 1:55, except for the Friday night lights practice and the final practice, which is a 10:30 a.m. practice, kind of an oddball there, but probably just trying to get out of camp as quickly as possible that day. So we'll be there every day, of course, and cannot wait for it.
Now, do they have do you still have to get the registration like the last couple years?
You need a mobile ticket. Yep. Those will go on sale June 27th at 10 a.m. for season ticket holders and noon for everybody else, but never had an issue getting those, so it should be okay.
All right. And what's the longest stretch that we determined? It was the second string of practices, which I think is what, 6 in a row?
Yeah, it's the 1st through the August 6th. And so whatever that is, 6 practices in a row, that'll be the long stretch of the year.
All right. And as we mentioned to one of the listeners in an email, I would suspect at some point prior to training camp that David O will have some sort of article about what's the best way, especially for people that have never been before, to kind of experience, the whole training camp thing and things to do and that kind of stuff if they're coming.
Yeah, if you've never been to training camp, highly recommend. I know obviously people are all over the country. Not everybody can attend, but it's a great time. It's a great place, Latrobe and St. Vincent College. But if you can't be there, of course, we'll be there with our daily diaries and recaps. And we've already gotten a lot of good feedback and people who seem excited to read the report. So cannot wait for that. And
you usually sit right in the middle, halfway up, don't you?
Yeah, it's usually my territory, right around the 50. Halfway, try to catch some shade depending on how many people are there. So yeah, easy to spot. I'm the nerd with the binoculars and the notepad and all that kind of stuff. So I'm easy to find.
All right. What else do we got to talk about here?
Yeah, not a ton else. OTAs wrapping up and some players speaking yesterday. Connor Heyward spoke about, he's more confident in year 2, not questioning himself, says the offense kind of feels reflective of that with a lot of other second-year guys and Kenny Pickett, George Pickens, Jalen Warren, improved offensive line, etc. So we'll see how Connor Heyward's used. I think it'll be generally similar to his rookie season, probably a little more backfield fullback type of action with Derek Watt being gone, but it sounds like he's still going to be viewed as this, tight end, H-back, chess piece type of player. But a guy that, we talk about year 2 jumps, and obviously the focus is primarily and rightfully on Pickett and Pickens, but it can be on guys like Connor Heyward as well.
I tell you that one thing that really stuck out to me, and I've said this about a couple of guys, I think in these interviews so far during OTAs, he really, it seems like in a year's time, thinking back to his rookie season interviews about this time, he seems like another one that's really matured and talks more like he's been there a couple. Yeah, and that's the kind of stuff that you would expect and all like that. It felt like he really grew up real fast with him, and he just sounded a lot more confident. He said he's a lot more confident. He's saying, even though he kind of had a good grasp on what went on, this time last year about his confidence level. Now he's not questioning himself, as much now on plays and all like that. So that's good. He's got a lot firmer grasp as would be expected. In a second year. Mike Tomlin all the time talks about second year jumps of players. One of the things that really stuck out to me last year with Connor Heyward specifically, and we kind of knew this a little bit with him coming out of Michigan State and all. For a guy his size and all and build, he's got a really good catch radius, really good hands. I think he's never going to be a premier blocker close to the line of scrimmage, but we did see him used in some of that split flow stuff, especially later on in the season, of him at least doing a good job in the attempt category. Obviously, most of his better blocks with some of that split zone stuff were kind of cut blocks, but those were effective, I thought, more than not later on in the season because of his size. And we talked about this all, since the day he was drafted. He's never going to be a guy that you're going to really make a habit out of attaching to the end of the line of scrimmage. Good effort there. It's just you're asking him to do too much in a lot of those situations, but he is a guy that you can move around in that offense, H-back, split out, kind of in the slot. Obviously, we didn't see hardly any fullback stuff, right, last season, but if you did use him in that role in 2023, you could probably do some creative stuff. And look, I'm all for. And they did, to their credit, they did use Derek Watt a little bit more with the ball in his hands last season. But a lot of that stuff was, the dives, the short yardage stuff, which, by the way, the Steelers wraps, if there's one tiny hat to hang your hat on when it comes to the Steelers offense, last season, it was short yardage, right? And not just running backs with the ball in their hands. I'm talking wide receivers, tight ends, that any time that the ball was put in the hands, even quarterbacks, the quarterback sneaks were very effective last season in third and fourth down with 1 or 2 yards to go. I wrote about that earlier this week as well too. So basically, coming out of last season, if there's one thing to hang your hat on with this team, it was third and fourth down, 1 or 2 yards to go. They only had one fail. I think it was something like 27 out of 28 or 28 out of 29 attempts when it comes to that kind of stuff there. So back to Connor Heyward, if indeed we see him more as a fullback, a true fullback role in 2023, you could do some creative stuff, leak him out of the backfield runs. How about the will is undefeated, right?
He looked good on it.
Yeah. Look, I mean, will we see it a ton? No, but I think he's got the skill set where you could do that, especially if you have good setup plays for that kind of stuff, where you put him back there and early in the game, and maybe you run a run a lead block situation with him, but then you come back and maybe do something where you wheel him out. Those kind of things. I think he has proven that he can catch the ball out of the backfield. So do we expect Connor Heyward to have more touches? I mean, obviously more snaps, we would think, right?
Sure, and probably more touches.
Right, and that's where I'm going. I think you can get more offensive snaps out of them and more touches out of them overall.
Yeah, I'm with you. The value in Connor Heyward is through his versatility. It'd be a disservice to him and his team if he's only doing one thing, lining up at one spot, and I don't expect that to be the case, which was basically the story last year, but I think you can probably even do more with him this year. I think this guy can carry the ball a bit. You're right. They did do some kind of fullback bellies with Derek Watt, and he's got some size, and just, it's hard to stop on 3rd and 1. But I think with Connor Heyward, who's a former running back, was playing that position full time before Kenneth Walker transferred from Wake Forest to Michigan State, and that bumped Hayward to more of that tight end type of role. But yeah, I think you can do a lot with him. As you mentioned, those constraint plays, whether let's say you boot and throw to Hayward in the flat, and then later, to go off your idea, you boot and you have Hayward run the wheel. And so you think you're going to kind of fake the flat there, then Hayward bursts upfield and get a big play out of that. I think in the Canada-based offense, it has a lot of, fair amount of play action and bootlegs and kind of space concepts into the flat. These kind of 3-level reads where you're getting flat, kind of this over route and the corner route, kind of, easy progression for the quarterback to work. You're going to get some opportunities there. So, yeah, I think Hayward can certainly make an impact in a lot of different ways. I want to see him lined up in the slot. You do some empty stuff with that big 13 personnel with him, Washington, Frymouth. I think that's exciting. That's attractive.
How about some 23?
You can do 23, yeah. If you want to bring in Gentry, and again, I think there's a lot of mixing and matching personnel-wise you can do. And then special teams. He was pretty much a four-face guy last year, and I think he played 2/3 of the special team snap, which is basically everything except for like field goal block and field goal rush. And so he should continue that role there, which is even more important because you've lost some of those special teamers, including Derek Watt. So he's a guy that's not going to have, great overall numbers. It's going to kind of be popcorn. Some weeks he'll have 4 catches. Some weeks he'll have 0. He'll play more, play less, depending on game plan, game circumstance. But a guy that's going to be a really valuable member just based on all the hats he can wear, all the things he can offer you as an offense and as a team.
Over or under 3.5 carries for Connor Heyward in 2023? Is that
I'm smashing the over. How many did Derek Watt have last year? He had more than 3, right?
He had
a bunch of those third and short.
Yeah. How many?
He had 9 carries last year.
Okay, maybe I need to raise that then.
I'm locked in on 3.5 though. I'm taking the line.
All right. How much should I put you down for?
All of it.
$2. Let's see. Last year with
call it 10. You want to call it 10 on Hayward?
Let's go 10.5.
Okay, I like it.
Let's push it. You still?
I'll take the over still, just because I think
on carries, right?
Sure.
I'm not talking. Okay.
On carries. Because you can do some stuff that you couldn't do with Derek Watt. To seal the game against the Raiders. You think about the touchdown to George Pickens, but it was the Connor Heyward jet sweep that sealed the game. You can do that kind of stuff with him.
Didn't he also have one similar to that? It was again because he had one of those third. He showed up in the 3rd and 4th down, 1 to 2 yards against Cleveland late in the season. Wasn't that the same thing? It
was the week 18 finale. So yeah, it was a similar. I forget the exact play, but yeah, it was the same concept. And so you can do that with him. And I think, although, that third running back will emerge, they're not going to carry 2 running backs, and Hayward's not going to be like the true number 3 running back, but you could, I don't know how many snaps Alfonso Graham or Higgins or somebody might actually log. And so Hayward could kind of be used as that third running back in some, certain situations.
How about total touches over or under for Connor Heyward? Let's see. Last year, Watt had 14.
And Hayward had 14 last year.
Is 17.5 a good over under number? Man,
I think higher.
That feels like a lot of touches.
I don't know.
I guess it's 1 a week. A little bit more than 1 a week.
Yeah, there'll be games where he gets like 0, but there'll be games where he's gonna have 3 or 4 touches. Again, all that boot stuff that they're gonna do with him, I think that's gonna be an asset. So I would put it at 20.
All right.
I think I still take the over on 20.
What about 20.5? Would you?
Yeah, I'm still taking the over.
Okay. All right.
I'm not playing blackjack rules. Hit me on 20.5.
Long story short, we expect to see more of Connor Heyward in 2023, and quite honestly, expect him to be effective.
Yeah, because the guy barely even, like the first quarter of last year, he didn't play offensively. Obviously, he was just, feeling things out. He played on teams, but not on offense. So most of his stats came the last half of the year. He did play a fair amount against Tampa Bay because Frymouth was concussed and that one did not play. But I think Hayward, he's not going to get 50 touches, but I think 25 seems reasonable.
How many snaps did Watt play last year? Watt had 70. Connor should crush 77 because he played 100 something himself.
Yeah.
Last year. I guess the question is what would kind of be his ceiling as far as offensive snaps played? Last year he played 174. He should be able to easily reach 200. I guess over under on him would probably be around 225.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I don't know where I stand on the number of snaps. It'll be more than his rookie year. So I think 225 to 250 is about the range he'll be in.
Okay. All right.
Maybe around 250.
All right. So once again, my takeaway where we sit on him, and I'm sure you feel the same, is very, very positive with him at this time of the year, especially to hear him talk to the media on Thursday.
Let me ask you just one more Hayward prediction question that I think might be a tough one to answer. Does Connor Heyward play more snaps on offense or on special teams in 2023? He played 284 on teams.
Yeah, he's going to be a core guy. He's going to be a guy that you want out there quite a bit. So I would still say that he finishes the season, assuming he stays healthy, yada, yada, all the qualifiers there, more special team snaps than he plays offensive snaps. It'll be a closer gap this year. But I would still take special team snaps being more than his offensive snaps.
Okay, fair enough. I think I would too, but I'm with you. I think that gap will be pretty
considerably close. It might end up even for all we know. But I would still take the special teams number being higher.
All right, Dave. Anything else from OTAs that you heard from any players? I know Leal spoke about not even knowing how many positions he lined up in last year. I guess he feels more confident this year, but still maybe a bit unclear in terms of how he's going to be used, but ready for whatever is coming his way.
Yeah, and I don't want to go back down that rabbit hole. We talked quite a bit about that, but I think one of the things that you'll probably be looking for right out of shoot in training camp is how he's used, and obviously once we get into this is going to remain a mystery overall to us until we see more on tape, and it's really hard to we had this conversation in direct messages yesterday with kind of the group and all. And I think Jonathan Heitrader wrote a little bit about it yesterday as well, too, based on Leal's comments and all. I mean, we don't have enough really tape on him to really make a firm evaluation yet. We still relying quite a bit on his college tape overall with him. And just because he was moved around, that poor kid's head had been spinning because, as you brought up, he spent 5, 6, 7 weeks on IR. So he got behind the moving train, if you will, and then to come back and then to play, kind of the positions that he's asked to play, especially later in the season there. It's just, he's a real hard player to gauge about what they actually have in him at this point. And hopefully some of those mysteries will be able to get a firmer grasp on the further we get into the offseason here.
Yeah, again, be watching for that as one of the top things I'll be looking for, especially because during the first 4 non-padded practices, there's still evaluation that you're doing, of course, but my primary focus is basically on, okay, who's lining up where, who's running with what team, so I can kind of get a baseline level of that and think about that less when the pads come on. The evaluation kind of really ramps up. And I just kind of want to get a good starting point for how players are being used and where they're being used and those kinds of things. And so just from assignment alignment standpoint on Leal, I'll be watching for that very closely those first 4 non-padded days of practice.
All right, really, the only other real big takeaway with OTAs now over with and getting ready for mandatory minicamp now is the fact that all these guys that were quote unquote kind of dinged up and you kind of wondered how much level of participation and all that they would have early in the summer. I think a real positive progression with all those guys. Cole Holcomb, Allen Robinson talked about how he's really getting his kind of first full work at this point. And obviously those two are newcomers there. Calvin Austin the third. I mean, the reports overall have been very, very, very strong when it comes to him. The Steelers even released a couple of videos of him, and it looks like he's, pretty much at full speed and has the speed there. So I think just an overall health takeaway with this team right now is that they're in very good. I mean, even though I don't know what level that Cole Holcomb's out there doing stuff in teams or not teams, but even just kind of the individual stuff. It seems like he's moving real good. So that would be just another takeaway is just, overall health of this team looks very, very, very strong at this point of the summer. And hopefully that carries over into the next 3 practices and mandatory minicamp.
Yeah, I'm with you, Dave. With Austin just good at it seems like he's a full participant. I mean, it's nice to hear about the speed being there and him looking good. The environment is conducive to the success of a small, fast, shifty wide receiver like Austin. So once the pads come on, obviously once he gets into a game, those are all going to be the critical components of the evaluation. But still, good to hear. Better to hear that than to not hear these positive things. And, again, another thing we'll be watching for pretty closely once camp ramps up.
Do you remember how many plays of 25 yards or more that Calvin Austin on offense, that Calvin Austin III put up in college?
I do not. That is Dave Bryant territory for sure.
I'm going to read them off to you. I don't have them committed to memory, so don't feel bad. I'm
shame.
I'm cheating. I'm cheating here. Receiving alone in 2021, 14 plays of 25 yards or longer. 2020, 12. 2019, 4. And 2018, none. So it went 4, 12, that's 16. He had 30 receiving plays of 25 yards or longer. Rushing wise, of 20 or longer had 1, looks like 2 in total there. So I think 30, they don't break them down by 20 or longer with receiving, but 30 alone when it comes to the receiving aspect. The Steelers could use at least half of those, couldn't they? 15 explosive receiving plays. That's probably pushing it as far as expectations for Calvin Austin as a receiver. What would you put as an over or under on receiving explosive plays of 20 yards? Or let's just put explosive plays in total, because he's obviously going to get a jet sweep or 12, assuming he stays healthy and all. What would you like to see as far as explosive play production out of Calvin Austin III in 2023?
And this is again defined 20 plus yards from scrimmage.
Right. And all plays,
Sure.
Rushing, receiving, all like that. Can he hit 15? That feels a little rich, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, just because the volume's not going to be there. Obviously, he was a game breaker at Memphis. He was also getting the ball a lot more because he was, one of their probably the top weapon they had. I mean, if he can get
10,
4 or 5, I was thinking lighter. How many catches do you think he's going to have this year? And it's going to be a lot of the short stuff, some of the space stuff, and he can turn those into big plays. But it's the NFL, you're not going to do that on a routine basis. So I was thinking
5 or 6,
like 5 or 6. Get maybe 5 receiving, 1 rushing. I mean, if he gets more, fantastic. But I mean, he's a number 4 receiver, rotational guy, probably going to play 35 snaps a game, touch the ball 4 or 5 times a game, roughly speaking. So I'm going to be a little conservative with the number.
Well, they need these explosive plays to come from somewhere.
Yeah, they do. I mean, we've talked about that ad nauseum, and it's still a true point and one worth talking about over and over until there's change, until there's improvement. The downfield passing game has to be better. There has to be more yak opportunities to create some of those catch and run situations. Name of the game in the NFL today is big plays, and Pittsburgh has not had enough really since 2018.
All right, what has stuck out to you the most over the course of these last 3 weeks?
Yeah, it's hard to know what sticks out the most.
Mike Tomlin can drive a go-kart.
Yeah.
So can
Najee Harris. Yeah. So can Najee Harris. Not being there, it's always, because I'm in that camp experience, I kind of just wait for that. I mean, the health of the team, everybody participating is going to, be important, especially defensively. Mika Fitzpatrick talked about the defensive chemistry, and that all sounds good right now, but hopefully, it's able to create some progress and smooth out some of those bumps that may come up with the new faces, new pieces there. To hear the good things about Mark Robinson, I'm biased, so maybe that's why I'm gravitating towards it more, because I've kind of been more the pro Robinson camp than maybe some other people. I think he still could have a great shot to start week 1 over Landon Roberts, and it really sounds like he's had a good OTAs and getting a lot of reps with Cole Holcomb not working in team.
I think also a thing that kind of sticks out is, you got a lot of newcomers, obviously, in that secondary and all, but a lot of guys with experience and all, and obviously, Pat, if something busts in that secondary, I don't think Patrick Peterson. I think it's going to be easy to pick out on the TV tape, some scoldings, as well as even the all-22, because I don't think Patrick Peterson's going to have a problem with quickly letting people know maybe where the bus came from, that kind of stuff. And my overall takeaway from all this is the fact that, you've got guys that have played a lot of games in that secondary, right? Patrick Peterson, obviously Minkah Fitzpatrick. Wallace has been on the field enough now. Even James Pierre, God forbid, we have to see him, assuming he makes the team, has to get on the field. Neal, right? Casey, all these guys, you've got a lot of experience there, even on top of, you obviously going to be excited about your 2 new young corners in Joey Porter Jr. and Corey Trice, but just get the feeling that those guys are quickly getting on the same page with each other.
Yeah, it sounds encouraging, but it is June and everything looks good right now on the whiteboard. And when you map things out and you're running, your card, and everything's kind of more at a bit slower type of speed. And once you face that tough, schematically creative 49ers offense week 1 is really when the test begins. But yeah, it's good that everybody's healthy, everybody's working, everybody's there, because they're valuable reps to get right now.
All right. What else do we have to talk about today? Anything?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about my article I wrote yesterday on Kendrick Green. My assessment, my short answer in the title of the article was, the Steelers failed Kendrick Green. Kendrick Green did not fail the Steelers. Is that a fair, albeit broad, assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. And as we've talked about, almost right out. First and foremost, the pick surprised me overall, and I never saw it coming, especially in the round that it was. And then, some of the comments that Mike Tomlin had made, during the rookie season and all like that, them just insistent on sticking with him as long as they did, because the problems with him right out of the chute. And he has spoken about this as well too, to some degree, and how much he really didn't enjoy center right out of the chute. And they haven't done him any favors at all. And then fast forward into his second season, he was just there primarily because they had the pick invested in him, right? Because he obviously didn't play, and now it's almost, you see what they did during the offseason and the positions. It's almost back to, all right, well, either you're going to make it at center or you're not as a backup. And I kind of have my doubts whether or not he is, obviously is going to make it or not. And it does seem like he was set up, to fail right out of the chute. From the evaluation on.
Yeah, I just think it was one of the worst evaluations from the standpoint of what Pittsburgh said they were getting, what they were hoping to get, and what they actually drafted. Just to go back to Mike Tomlin saying they wanted a, 4-year guy. They didn't want an underclassman. They wanted somebody that was, basically day one ready. And Kendrick Green was none of those things. Not even close. I just don't understand how they whiffed that back. It's like they put the wrong name down on the card. Like they were drafting a different player. That's how different what they were saying they were getting and what they needed and what they actually drafted was. I think in a different world, if Green got the SAT, maybe he could have developed, maybe he would have had a chance. I still think Pittsburgh was the wrong scheme for him. I think if he went to a real zone heavy system, the old, Mike Shanahan, Alex Gibbs style, he goes to San Francisco, if he could be like a Shaq Mason, a squatty, athletic body, I think that would have been his best shot, best opportunity to win in the NFL. But to me, coaching is all about putting players in position to succeed. And Pittsburgh did not do that one iota with Kendrick Green.
Man, where do you think his confidence level's at right now? And nobody, he's got, I'm not a fan of players reading the press or blogs or anything like that, but they also can't stay in a bubble. He sees it. He knows it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine what it was like his rookie year. It had to have been just hell, just all the pressure, all this weight. Because initially, obviously, draft pick people loved him, and there was initial positive press about him, and that went away real quick. And yeah, it had to have been an extremely difficult year. And the guy's young. I mean, how old was he coming out? And underclassman. I mean, just a tough situation.
Right, and I just wonder where his head's at right now.
He's probably in a bit better because he's probably learned quickly to block all that out, and he probably reads less of that stuff now. And it's also just talked about a bit less because he's not a starter and there's less expectations. There's really no expectations for him. But yeah, backup center right now. We'll see. That position is open. It is vacant. So, we'll see what happens.
All right. But yeah, I mean, I agree. Obviously I agreed with everything that you wrote in there.
I mean, I know we're kind of beating the dead horse here, but like, why do you think they drafted this guy? Like, what do you think they thought? What did they miss so badly in terms of evaluating this guy, in terms of what they were looking for?
Man, if you drafted him in a fifth or sixth round, are you even having, are you even questioning it? You're still probably questioning it, but probably not as much. I don't know. It just felt like, oh God, we didn't get one of the centers that we wanted. We got to draft one here, Mm-hmm. And Clem knows the most about him, So it's obvious somebody missed somewhere in there,
Yeah, and I think, I'm speculating. I don't want to put the blame on any one person. It's an organizational call. That drafting is not about just one report from one guy, one dude's opinion. But I think Adrian Clem, the former O-line coach, had a lot of sway with Kendrick Green. He's the one that went to Illinois, helped work this guy out. And I think, the Clem hire was obviously not the right hire. It just kind of makes sense. That's probably one reason why he had a quick exit in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, but you got checks and balances in there with scouts,
Right. Yeah. Again, I don't know what the reports were. I don't even know what Clem's report was. And again, Tomlin and Colbert bear the responsibility. They make the call. They make the pick. But my guess in my head is Clem had a good report on Green at his pro day, because that was COVID year, right?
Well, yeah, it has to be, right?
Or was
this is his third. This is his third season, right?
I'm getting the whole timeline runs together. I want to make sure I'm not
2021.
Yeah, 21. Yeah. So there was no combine that year, right? There was a 2020 combine because that was right before everything shut down. So you had less information to work with. It makes the pro day more valuable. Yeah, I don't know. A weird one for sure. I think it's the worst evaluation, not necessarily the worst pick, because it's not a first rounder. It's not quite as consequential, but I think it's the worst evaluation that Kevin Colbert ever made as an organization.
That's pretty strong.
Is what could be worse? I mean, there are worse misses in Devin Bush, but just again from the standpoint of, like, if they drafted, it's like drafting Devin Bush because you loved his size and run stuffing ability. Like, that's how different it is with Kendrick Green. Like with Devin Bush, they missed. He got hurt, a little too small. But those are misses that are pretty typical. A guy just didn't work out for kind of more typical reasons. For this, it was, again, it feels like they were trying to draft a different player.
Right. It's a big miss.
Yeah,
that's for sure. Hopefully, like, turn it around.
Like again, Senquez Golson was the worst pick, quote unquote, in my rankings. But yeah, that's not like a misevaluation. That's just an injury, and there was no return on investment. It's hard to really blame the team for that, as bad as it turned out to be. But I think Green is in that unique camp of just totally getting that one wrong.
All right, where else are we going here? Anywhere?
Let's see. Let's probably get to some reader emails and close out today's show.
All right. Let me pull them up here to see what we have. Andrew Parrish. This just came in 11 minutes ago. Hey guys, longtime listener, first time email. All right. Two questions. First, what is a realistic stat line for Pickett in year 2? Will he be top 10 in yards and TDs? And second, I understand all the concern on a defensive side with the inside linebacker and D-line, but how is it this team's biggest concern, the secondary, with a lot of new faces in the room and the lack of a true slot corner? What is the biggest question mark on defense? Well, we just talked about the team's concerns in the secondary with a lot of the new faces. Don't bother me when it comes to that talk as much as it does what we've talked about all offseason with a true slot corner.
Yeah, I mean, I've had that concern though about the newness in that room. I wrote the article. That was my one big concern, the growing pains that may come along with that unit. So I think it all kind of coincides with the slot corner changes too. But yeah, we've talked about that and recently discussed that.
He says, I understand all the concern with, but how is it this team's biggest concern? Yeah, I mean, Andrew, we've talked about how there are overarching concerns in the secondary. I guess, I'm getting a little bit recency happy, just based on some things that I'm hearing out of these veteran guys, a lot of these new faces and all like that. So I'm less concerned about the new faces and still really concerned about, because I mean, true slot corner, I mean, that's become almost an every down position now in the NFL,
Sure. Absolutely.
So I don't think we've downplayed any of that, Andrew. I mean, it obviously is going to be interesting to see how the inside linebackers shake out this year. I mean, I think that's another part of this. And look, you've had turnover on a defensive line. It is going to be interesting to watch this entire defense come together and come together quickly.
Yeah, I think it'll be a crucial part of this. So, you got to stay healthy in training camp. Hopefully that rings true. Yeah, it's not insurmountable, and it's a veteran group of guys that are coming together. It's not a ton of rookies. There are some, obviously, in Joey Porter Jr. We'll see what role Corey Trice has, but Cole Holcomb, Landon Roberts, Patrick Peterson, Keanu Neal, they're veteran type guys, and so hopefully they're going to gel quicker. But I think there will be some growing pains to deal with.
All right, realistic stat line for Pickett. I'll read off what Mike Clay at ESPN has here. He has 320 completions on 497 attempts for 3,417 yards, 21 TDs, 12 interceptions, 34 sacks. He's predicting there. That would be 2 sacks a game there. I'm less worried about statistical output with Kenny Pickett more so than actually just seeing what my eyes tell me as far as the jump goes.
Sure. I think the specific numbers, red zone production, those kinds of things carry more weight. But if you want to just give the broad-based numbers, those sound about right to me in terms of what I'm expecting. Somebody asked me in my mailbag yesterday. I think I said something to the effect of, over 3,000 yards. If you could get to 20 plus touchdowns and keep it under 10 interceptions, I think it's probably going to be a strong year overall for Kenny Pickett. Just again, 30,000 foot view. And those numbers are generally in line with kind of what I'm thinking.
I think top 10 statistical category in both yardage and touchdowns might be hard for him. If he hits it, fantastic there. But I mean, I'm looking back at last year alone across the NFL. Jalen Hurts was 10th overall in passing yardage with 3,701 yards. He had 22 touchdown passes, just 6 interceptions. Boy, if you could get a touchdown to interception rate like that out of Kenny Pickett, fantastic. There. If I told you right now Kenny Pickett had 22 touchdown passes and 6 interceptions, you'd take that in a heartbeat, wouldn't you?
Today, yesterday, tomorrow, I would take that all day. Yeah, I think top 10.
I'd take the 3,700 yards passing as well too.
Yeah, and the 10th ranked touchdowns, it was a big tie with 25. That might be more achievable than the yards. but I still think he's not going to finish top 10 in passing touchdowns.
I think a realistic takeaway after the season that he ends up in top 15 in passing yardage and touchdowns. I think touchdowns, if he stays healthy, I don't think that, I don't know who was 15th last year in touchdown passes. Andy Dalton with 18. So obviously we hope he could at least hit that, right?
Yeah, he better hit at least that if he's playing all 17 games, because there's got to be some multi-touchdown performances. I don't think he has one in his career. And I think the numbers will be depressed a bit just based on this run-heavy offense. They're not going to throw the ball a ton. Ideally, obviously, if you get down late, that'll change the script. But yeah, again, throw. Could you?
I'd like to have. I would like to have. And look, his adjusted net yards for passing attempt stat needs to jump. The closer it can get to 7, the better. That's going to be a measuring stick for me. I mean, it definitely needs to be over 6. It needs to be over 6.5, quite honestly. There. So that's one metric that a lot of people don't pay attention to that I obviously do, that I want to see a jump in. I think there's a legitimate possibility that we could be talking about Kenny Pickett finishing top 15 in the league in both passing yards, touchdown passes, touchdown to interception ratio, all like that. I think that would be a nice jump for him to have. And obviously statistics and tape might not match. I would obviously want the tape to match the stats in it, but I think that's the more realistic line with him for his second season. Yeah,
I think that's a good assessment, Dave.
Let's see, where else should we go here? Michael Galupo writes in, Colin Coward comments and Kenny Pickett. Hey guys, continuing off of your conversation from Wednesday, if you could have steered the Steelers offseason in a different direction, would you have, or were there too many pieces in place, Najee, Pickett, to even try? Let's see. On that note, this season comes down to Kenny Pickett. The optimist in all of us hopes for a Pro Bowl type season from him. But if he plays mediocre or even bad, are the Steelers going to be looking to find that piece at quarterback to take our offense to the next level of the Chiefs, Bills, or Eagles? Apologize for the long question. Hypotheticals, just some thoughts listening to the Wednesday show. All right, back to if you could have steered the Steelers offseason in a different direction, would you have, or were there too many pieces in place? Well, I think he makes a good point there, because, how much, especially on the offensive side of the ball, how much, and that's something we kind of covered, how much different could this thing have even looked offensively during the offseason? And to me, it's not very. To me, it's not very much. Outside of we talked about the potential. Okay, and it would have been outside the norm had they gone out and got a franchise high priced left tackle, but that would have impacted your draft, obviously, and all. They went out and traded for Allen Robinson, which was a little bit of a surprise. I mean, nobody saw that coming. They already had, they did go out and address the interior offensive line in free agency, which was a welcome direction that they took. I'm not sure, to reverse engineer, once again, playing off what we said the other, how would we have steered this much different than it went?
Sure. In my Omar Khan report card, there were a couple of, particulars I disagreed with, some of the inside linebacker stuff, but there's not one big move that they missed out on where I sat there and said, man, Dave, they should have done this move. That would have been a game changer. I mean, there's things you can go back and nitpick, and, things I liked more than others. I think they should have re-signed Cam Sutton over Patrick Peterson. I think that would have paid what Detroit paid Sutton, which was a hefty amount, 3 years, $33 million. I know that Peterson obviously is playing for less than that. I think that might be one of their biggest miscues.
They could have done both, really, if they wanted to.
What, sign Peterson and Sutton?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think Peterson would have come to Pittsburgh, but they could have signed Sutton. Financially, they could have done that without really an issue, correct?
Yeah, I mean, they could have made that work.
Yeah, so I think that
looking at it as we sit here on June 9th,
Sure. So I would say that's probably the biggest mistake that they made. but it's never going to be perfect. So I think it's overall a good offseason.
All right. As far as Kenny Pickett goes, I mean, unless it's just awful, I mean, bad, awful. I don't think this team is turning around and looking at the next draft at the next potential franchise quarterback.
Yeah, probably not. Although, do you give any weight to the fact that Omar Khan and Andy Weidel didn't draft Kenny Pickett? They didn't make him their guy. The old GM did.
Nah, I think everybody was. I'm not. I think Khan and them were probably still on board. I don't think they would try to distance themselves that quick from that. No.
Well, Weidel wasn't even in Pittsburgh when Pickett got drafted, and I don't know how much Khan played a role in the process because he wasn't.
Well, I'm saying I don't think Weidel would take the course of action and say, well, I wasn't here,
Well, I mean, just intuitively, when you draft a guy, you kind of have more of a connection. You want to stick with him more, especially when it's your quarterback. You feel like you have ownership of that. And if you didn't draft the guy, I do think it's a bit easier, not just for quarterback, but for any player to kind of cut bait because he wasn't your guy.
Plain and simple. I'll leave it at this. I don't think they are looking at Kenny Pickett as a what's the word? Crescendo season, where pass fail, where whatever we see this year is going to be a move on or keep type situation there.
Right. I was just playing a little bit of devil's advocate. I mean, I expect, I'm not thinking about it much. Let's get through the season. We can talk about Pickett's future after this season. It's just kind of all, hot air right now to talk about. I expect Pickett to be the starter in 23 and 24. And, from there, we'll see. But I'm just kind of thinking out loud about, how Pickett got drafted.
All right. Zach Stevens, Uncle Dave and Cousin Alex. Thanks for the great draft offseason coverage. I know perfect depth is impossible. Are there any other positions relatively in the solid, he says, impossible to achieve in the salary cap era? And we all know Dave's feelings on the fungibility of the running back position. Are there any other positions relatively close to running back in terms of fungibility? That's a good question.
Some will say inside linebacker, off-ball linebacker. Defensively, is the running back of the defense.
I don't know. The way they've kind of gone through these inside linebackers, I don't think that's very fungible at all.
Or it's extremely fungible. I don't know. They're changing them like socks.
In terms of I think of fungibility as being, can you throw damn near anybody in there and still have some success to some degree? Now, look, does that mean you don't draft a running back at all and you just play the free agent, undrafted free agent game every year? No, but I definitely when it comes to first round and all, it's going to take a lot to ever get me away from the fact that I don't like to see teams spend first round picks on running backs. Period. Now, as far as fungibility of position goes, my first thought after reading that is no. There's no other position that comes relatively close to having a fungibility aspect of it like running back. That would be my initial thought.
I think the argument for inside linebacker, off-ball linebacker is just in the way that if you have a good offensive line, any running back you put back there is going to have success. If you have a good defensive line, your off-ball linebackers are going to work cleaner. They're going to look pretty good because of that. And it's kind of, I think, the relationship that people view off-ball linebacker and running back. If you have a good line in front of them, the guys there are going to have enough success to allow you to win.
I know this is a bit blasphemy as far as, because I love guards. I love guards.
Don't do that to poor guards.
Could guard be the next closest fungible position on an NFL team to running back? Now, I still think there's a huge gap in there, but could you win with at least, only one average guard or below average guard? And I think the answer is yes. I mean, look at the line the Steelers had several years ago when they won a Super Bowl by the end of the year, right? I would tend to think if there's a next closer fungible position to running back, it might be guard. Is that fair?
I know you've seen some aliens because you've been abducted and they have brought somebody else back. I can't believe I'm hearing this out of Dave Bryan's mouth. It's the least valuable position of the offensive line. The tackle is more important. The center is more important. It's just hard for me to have fungibility.
I'm just saying I'm not saying it's sure. Very fungible. I'm just saying, could it potentially be the next closest? I still think don't get me wrong, I still think there's a wide gap there.
Mm-hmm.
But could it potentially be the next closest fungible position in the NFL?
I'll still say inside linebacker is more fungible than guard. I would from the most fungible to the least, I would say running back 1, inside linebacker 2, and then maybe guard 3. Although tight end, some offenses that either your offense revolves around your tight end or it doesn't, and if it doesn't, then you can probably still win.
Yeah, but that tight end still better be able to block.
Sure, but you can get cheap blockers. Like that's not hard to find. It's hard to find the receiving guys or the well-rounded type of guys.
Okay, I would still contend that guards and once again, I think the distance is way out there. But I would say that maybe guard would be the next closest in to running back when it comes to fungibility.
Okay, fair enough.
Let's get to one more here. Brett, this is not a long one from Brett, so I'm only going to take one part of this. I'll take the first part of it. Maybe we'll hit the other two in a future podcast here. He says, the drafting of Washington is reminding me a lot of former first-round tight end Eric Green out of Liberty. He was a Planet Theory guy with similar dimensions, 6'6", 280, built as an offensive lineman with wide receiver skills. He was a good player, but had a Hall of Fame or bust type of hype. So I think a lot of Steeler fans were disappointed with him overall. He says, do you remember Eric Green? Sure, I remember Eric Green. Yeah, I remember. I'm 55. And what are your thoughts on the comparison, both as a player and high expectation? Man, I mean, you're talking such a span of years, though, and how, the NFL has evolved, especially at the tight end position there. I mean, Eric Green was obviously a monster at that time in the NFL, for sure. I'm trying to think back. You remember Eric Green more as the playmaker. You obviously didn't have all 22. What this is going to end up doing is going to end up having me going back down the rabbit hole watching Eric Green, the blocker. But I mean, from what I remember, Eric Green was a pretty ferocious blocker at the time there. I guess what he's asking here is the hype. Look, I mean, Eric Green's a first-round pick. Washington ended up being a third, but is there the same level of hype of Washington compared to Eric Green way back then? I mean, look, the hype on Washington's huge, I think. I mean, not so much maybe as a receiver, although it's there on tape. I mean, the catch radius, the stuff after the catch, they just had so many damn weapons there at Georgia, right? I mean, what if that, who was it? Bowers?
Brock Bowers. Yep. Bowers.
What if Bowers wasn't there? How much more would Washington have been used? Could he have been used in the passing game?
Sure. He would have been.
I think one of the things, maybe one of the more alarming things was just the red zone production with Washington coming out of Georgia, but I don't think that was his fault because he just wasn't. They didn't have to.
They ran the ball.
Down there and all. So let's see. Do you remember? And what are your thoughts on the comparison, both as a player and high expectations? I like the player in Washington, especially the blocking aspect. And as far as the high expectations go, I think a lot of it depends on what he can offer this team as a receiver more than anything. Because I mean, I'm going to be very disappointed if he's not as advertised as a blocker. I think the biggest question there is what can he offer this team as a pass catcher? And I think that's where really his ceiling might be able to be expanded coming out of college. Does all that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's hard to compare the two. I mean, I get the comparison, kind of freaky tight ends. I think Green's going to was and will be a more explosive playmaker as a receiver. I think Washington will be a more impactful blocker. In terms of hype, I do want to maybe pull back the reins on Washington a bit. I think he's going to be a contributor. I think he'll be an impact player. I don't want to assume that he's going to be this like all-world tight end out of the gate. I think
we talked about that with him and like Kittle and all. Like, I mean, he's a lumber,
right? But I think some people are expecting this guy to be like, super high-end receiving and make these crazy plays consistently.
Now, look, can if used properly, could Darnell Washington be a 10 TD reception guy with the Steelers?
If he was a focal point of a passing game more than he probably will be in Pittsburgh, yeah. I mean, because of the size, makes him super attractive.
Now, here's the thing. He's going to be competing with guys like Freiermuth because Freiermuth has proven when thrown the football in the red zone, he can get it done in there as well, too. And obviously, there's probably not going to be enough footballs or passing TDs to go around. But if he was with another organization that had intent, that drafted him with the intention of being an every down tight end, could he put up 10 TDs? Could he put up 700 receiving yards? Could he put up 50 to 65 catches? I think it's possible.
Sure, I think it's possible too. I guess my point is just for Pittsburgh, and still there is going to be a learning curve for him to make that jump, even though I think he's more refined than most college tight ends. There's still things he's got to work on. It's not always going to be pretty. There's going to be some quiet days. I just want people to understand that don't expect the moon for this guy right away.
Where the excitement should be when it comes to a guy like Washington, and the thing that's had me most excited the whole time has been his ability to block. And then added on top of that, even though it was limited usage, I thought he's got a great catch radius. I think he's, nimble enough to get you much needed yards after the catch type of thing. I think coming out of college as is, if you got that same player, I would be thrilled with that.
Yeah, I would too. I think he's a really unique guy. Like I said, one-on-one player in the draft, but there are some things to work on. I don't think he's this super fluid, huge receiving threat in terms of between the 20s open field pass game. He'll make some plays there. Number 2 tight end in a run-heavy offense, and it's going to have a lot of weapons, as a rookie. I just don't want us to assume this guy's going to, take the world by storm out of the gate.
All right, because this guy can block at the end of the line of scrimmage and out of space, whereas Freiermuth right now, when it comes to Freiermuth's blocking, he is a much better player out in space than he is attached.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, thanks for that, Brett. Maybe we'll hit the final 2 parts of this Monday, because there probably ain't going to be a lot to talk about, and probably not too many emails by then, so maybe we'll hit more of these. Anything else to add, Alex, as we get out of here on a Friday? What are you doing this weekend?
It's a good question. I don't have any plans. Anyone who want to recommend some things, hit me up. I do want to let you guys know that on Monday, barring something changing, but we do have planned for Monday, a really cool new article series. It'll start with a special guest doing some rating for Steelers Depot. So just to tease that, hopefully the plan is for it to go up Monday. And if it does, we'll talk about it on Monday's show.
All right. Sounds good. You teased that well. All right. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. Give us your Naji predictions. What's expectations for Najee Harris in 2023 in rushing yards and yards from scrimmage? How about that? If you want to support the site, SteelersDepot.com. hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button up right navigational bar. Obviously, all emails, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. Have a great weekend, everybody, and thank you for listening. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.